So what are we talking about today? Spiritual wisdom, intuition. No, a little bit about my trip. I'll tell you about that in a moment. But before we get there, we talk about intuition, our personal guidance system. There is a well-known phrase in Centers for Spiritual Living that speaks to it. It comes from our statement of belief, and it goes like this. We believe that anyone may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. The idea in that statement is that God, or if you prefer, life, intelligence, spirit, that whatever it is, it's talking to everybody all of the time. However, not everybody is listening to it all of the time. Sometimes none of the time. And so that's what we're focusing on this whole month, how to get better at listening and responding to this internal guidance system. Actually, this is part of a much larger sentence, and the complete statement goes like this. Perhaps you'll read it with me. We believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. Now, there's some key words in there that I've been thinking about. I've highlighted them: direct, anyone, and close. Direct. In other words, there's nothing between me and life and spirit. Well, how do they say that? No intermediary, nothing to go through. In other words, everyone is their own direct channel. In that regard, we're all on equal terms when it comes to being in relationship to life and its brilliance and wisdom. You know, it took me a while to really take that in, to get that, when I first came to a Center for Spiritual Living, because I had been taught in my religion of origin that life, spirit, only really spoke to certain people. Only certain people communed with the divine. The rest of us had to depend on them to interpret it for us. So I had the tendency to think that if life had a message for me, I was going to need some help to get it, that it would have to come through the right channels. So I was always looking for that right channel, always looking for something or someone that could help me get hooked up with spiritual inspiration. So it was always the next best teacher, the next best book, the next religion, the next anything, never me. I was always looking. So this next word really came to me as a revelation. Anyone. Anyone. Everyone. Not only men, not only women, not only one group and not another, not only good people, not only spiritual people, everyone. Everyone may receive and benefit from this spiritual guidance, and that means you and me. Everyone. And here it comes. If. There's always an if, isn't there? If. See, it's in that phrase. Anyone may. That's the if. If we listen to it. That's what close contact means. Listening. Noticing. Minding. Taking it in, paying attention to it, if I do that. In my reading, I came across these beautiful words by Donna Davis. Open your eyes to the beauty around you. Open your mind to the wonders of life. Open your heart to those who love you and always be true to yourself. And I thought, that's what listening to life is all about. Open myself. Mindfully open to it, because it is everywhere all of the time. Now, let me take a moment and open to it, to notice it, to take it in, and let it talk to me. I just returned from a trip to Ireland, and about 27 of us visited the Aran Islands as part of the trip. You know, that's the set of islands where they have that wonderful tradition of knitting those amazing sweaters with the cable patterns on. They also have another amazing tradition there, and that of pilgrimage. People have been going to the islands for a long, long time to retreat into solitude so that they can contemplate and commune with the divine. So to honor that tradition, the people traveling together, we visited one of the ancient sites early in the morning, but in the spirit of pilgrimage. In other words, we walked in complete silence. It was a long walk across a stony path, very barren, to this ancient fort that was probably used for ceremonial purpose. Nobody knows, in fact, what it was used for, or who the people who were that made it. But we made our way up there in complete silence, and we noticed that because of the way we walked, we were available to inspiration in a way that we don't always get when we're talking and chatting and getting ready to snap a picture. It changed the whole experience of being there. It was as if everything could speak to us, as if we had opened ourselves to it. And later the next day, the group sat together and they talked about how much more they got out of that experience just by taking the time to be mindfully present. And people were learning all sorts of things about their own life as if the stones were talking to them. More than what we typically get when we are unconscious. And what I brought back from that experience is I don't have to travel to Ireland to connect with life in that way. I can open myself to the beauty all around me anywhere. Here, in Katari. I can open my eyes and my mind to the information anywhere around me, anytime, if I would but just take a moment of noticing, taking it in, and let it speak to me. That's one of the intended outcomes of this theme for the month, spiritual guidance. That you and I will live more conscious lives, here and now, instead of wandering around in a kind of dream state, sleepwalking through life, missing the beauty, missing the prompts from intelligence that are all around us. The people who were the predecessors of this teaching, you know, they were students of this awareness, of consciousness, of spiritual guidance, the transcendentalists and Emerson and Thoreau and Emma Curtis Hopkins and Troward, and they thought of the wisdom inside a woman or inside a man as being something of a very high authority if we would just listen to it. If we would keep a close and personal relationship with it, that it would be able to tell us everything that we needed to know to live a life of meaning and connection and worth and value, that it would guide us through and around the obstacles of life by revealing to us and through us the truth. And some people call that God within, other people call it their higher self. We call it our intuitive and spiritual nature, and we think of it as the one pure voice that will always give us the real deal. Of course, there are challenges, like with recognizing it, especially if it's been a while since you paid any attention to it, and you no longer know what it is you're listening to. You know, being sure that what I'm listening to is actually, indeed, spiritual wisdom and not the result of a bad meal I ate last night. You know, that takes some practice getting back into that. And that class that Brenda Coburn is teaching, Beyond Limits, it's starting soon. It's a 10-week class. One of the lessons in the class is it's about your internal personal guidance system and how to recognize it and how to use it. But apart from recognizing inner wisdom, there's another challenge. And it's this. When we do recognize it, but we don't listen to it. You know, we might hear it. You know, some people feel it in their gut, however it comes to them, and then we ignore it. so we can do whatever it is we want to do anyway. Oh, I've got too many examples of that in my life. Far more than I care to admit. I was remembering several years ago when I was in the business world, I'm driving to a business meeting to set up a new deal and something. And I don't hear voices exactly in my head. It's more like an idea just pops into my mind. I suppose that's hearing a voice, same thing, however it comes. But anyway, this idea pops into my mind, and it says, don't go. You shouldn't go to this. But I keep going. And I keep on going and I start to feel sick. Like I've had food poisoning or something. I still go. And do you know that I got lost going to a place that I knew very well? But I stopped, I reoriented, and I still went. And don't you know that meeting went very, very poorly, and the whole deal turned out to be something I did not want to have anything to do with, that would have been a real detriment to my character, to my reputation. But I still wanted to go, because I was driven by profit. I don't want to pay any attention. I was flying back from the East Coast once, and I was waiting near the gate. I was flying Southwest, and all of a sudden they made one of those announcements, this flight has been oversold. And we're looking for volunteers. We'll give you a $200 gift voucher, and you'll be guaranteed on the next flight. It's 2 hours later. And this thought pops into my head. It says, take it. You should take it. And I'm not sitting around for 2 hours. And the thought says, take it. So I'm not taking it. Like, I'm having this conversation, in my head. So instead, I stay and I get my place on the oversold flight, which then sits for 3 hours on the runway. And the later flight gets home before me. Do you know what I'm talking about now? I believe it was Emerson who said there are 2 ways that we can learn in life. Let me see if I can get this right. One way is through intuition, and the other way is through tuition. In other words, you either listen now or you pay for it later. Either you listen to the guidance that comes from within and you follow it, that's intuitive learning, or you pay the fee that comes with not listening, that's tuition. And I'd like to be done with paying the price for living unconsciously, just not listening. So I'm practicing, I'm learning to stay as close to and as available to this inner presence as I possibly can, so that when I do hear it, and I know what I'm listening to, when I do hear that inner guidance, I can act quickly as I can. Because I have to train myself to act promptly. Because my mind, it can be very clever when it doesn't want me to follow guidance. It's very convincing. When it wants me to do the opposite of what inner guidance suggests, it's very clever. I don't know what your mind does, but my mind will come up with rationalizations that you can't fault. It will tell me why I don't need to do what I know is for real. Somebody once said, look at that word, rationalize. You can break it up into 2 parts, rational and lies. And I thought, wow, that's exactly how my mind works, It gives me these really rational, well-thought-out things that I know are lies, but they're not on the money. It's kind of what my mind does. It feeds those rationalizations to me to not follow spiritual guidance. It goes something like this. Spiritual guidance, intuition, says to us, it prompts us. It says, it's time to get out of that dead-end job. or it pops in, however it comes to you, it suggests you ought not to marry that person who drinks more than you're comfortable with. And even though something in us recognizes it, and in our hearts of hearts we know it's correct, we start to build the case, the rationalization for why we can go ahead anyway with what our lower level thinking wants. And the reasons why we do that, that's a whole nother seminar. But we go ahead and we postpone, and we ignore, and we overlook, and we avoid. When I say we, I might as well just say me. I don't know what you do. Do you do that? 6 people. So what happens for me is, in my mind, the conversation starts, oh, the job won't be so bad once I get used to it. Oh, one more purchase will be all right. I mean, it won't make a difference. Everybody needs a little luxury now and then. That's my mind, Oh, everybody needs a drink now and then, and I'm sure things will change once we get married and move in together. Yeah. You see, my rationalizations work only for a certain amount of time at best, because eventually I'm going to reach a point where the stories I tell myself bump into reality. And then things start to get shaky and fall apart. And when I don't follow my intuitive guidance, it's like at some point I bump into a glass ceiling beyond which I cannot rise, until eventually I have to come face to face with what I have been ignoring, and I get to look straight into the eye of what I am choosing to not do. Oh, I can think of times where I've gotten myself into a stuck place, not because I didn't know what to do, more because I knew exactly what to do, but wouldn't do it for whatever reason. Peer pressure, family pressure, lazy thinking, low-level goals. So here are the questions that I ask myself. I don't enjoy asking myself these questions, but this is what I do. I ask myself, Edward, what do you know you ought to be doing? You know that thing that if you started doing it now would make everything else flow more beautifully in your life? Or I can reframe that in a whole number of ways. I can ask, what is it, Edward, that your heart keeps telling you to do that you are ignoring? Or another version, what feelings are you denying? Because sometimes it comes in a feeling. It's not an idea or a voice, it's a feeling. Or I can ask myself, what dreams are you persistently delaying? Because sometimes that's how intuitive wisdom will call us, in the form of a vision, a dream for our lives, a yearning, and I constantly put it off. I can ask, which dreams am I putting off? Or I can say, what is it, Edward, that you are busying yourself up with so much that you have good reasons to not attend to that which you know in your soul you're supposed to be attending to? And I ask myself those questions at time when I'm feeling lost, or when I'm feeling stuck, or when I feel like life has abandoned me, or when I feel the world is just unjust. And typically these questions, when I ask myself, the answers will help me reconnect or realize that I've stopped listening to my own soul's wisdom. I've stopped responding to my heart. I haven't been believing in my dreams, and I'm not walking toward them. And when I ask myself the question, it's like I give myself a moment to open up again in a brand new way to life, to notice again what's going on, to take it in all the hints and clues and suggestions everywhere. and to let everything talk to me. Living an intuition-guided life may not be an easy thing to do, but it takes a lot of courage and a lot of maturity, and it sometimes prompts changes and choices that I don't think I'm ready for. But anything short of living in close personal contact with the indwelling God, to me, seems to be a half-life, half-happy, not really unhappy, but just not joyful, half alive, not quite dead. They're not really vibrant. Half in love, not unloved per se, but not soul satisfied. And I'm losing interest in living a life like that. And I see that around me a lot. People losing interest in their own rationalizations and the ones they receive from their culture or their family. People who are getting fed up and want to, like I do, live in a different way. I want to live in close personal contact with my intuitive and spiritual nature. I want to follow it more frequently. I want to wake up and have the sense that I'm part of a spiritual something going on that is guiding me. I want to sense the greatness of the creative mind and pay attention to it. I want to live. And my guess is that when a person, you or me, starts to listen more and more to their intuitive spiritual nature and less to that low-level noise, that we start to pay attention more keenly to that which sparks joy in our life and follow it. So I ask you again, what can you start doing right now that will immediately usher in freshness and joy into your life? Or is there a dream that you've been postponing too long? Or what is it that you're not attending to? I will risk making the claim that the good that we are trying to experience in our life is wrapped up in the answers to those questions. I'm thinking back to those words that I read earlier on. Open your eyes to the beauty around you. Open your mind to the wonders of life. Open your heart to those who love you. And always be true to yourself. And I thought we might use that as the foundation of our prayer practice today. So I invite you to breathe in with me and to exhale, letting your eyes close as we translate those statements into affirmations. I open my eyes to the beauty around me, and I see the spirit of wisdom everywhere I look. I open my mind to the wonders of life, and I see the divine presence revealing itself in spectacular ways wherever I look. I open my heart to those who love me and find that the universal love in me is responding to itself everywhere. And I remain true to my intuitive and spiritual self. I recognize that there is one intelligence everywhere present, in all things, in all times. And I realize that I live and I breathe and I move and I have my being within this intelligence, as we all do. And so the wisdom in me is the place where we are joined, not only to each other, but to divine wisdom. And I call upon it to guide and to sustain and to direct me and all of us. That intuitive spiritual wisdom is true to its nature. It knows nothing of competition or control or combat. It speaks only of the highest truth, the best form of collaboration, the deepest compassion, wisdom, and love. And it speaks it in me and all people. By this prayer, I'm learning to attune myself to its ministry and its guidance. It is as if I am returning to my senses today. And so I celebrate this prayer and this wisdom that is flowing, and I look forward to seeing it produce itself in my life. And so I seal this prayer by saying the formula we use together, and so it is. And I invite you to breathe in now and to sigh.